Welcome, everyone, to Game Day Sports Radio. Tonight, Crazy 8 College Pick'em. I'm once again joined by Dave Smith out of the Midwest, public address announcer for the Chicago Bulls, several universities. Dave, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Glad to be back.
Steve, the teacher. Steve, have we had any more cross-country meets yet?
You know what? Tomorrow's the big one, district.
Steve, it's always a pleasure to have you on. You always have a unique angle to every game and unique perspective. And Coach, looking pretty sharp there tonight. Got a big date afterwards?
Already had it.
That's good. Well, yeah. Pleasure to have you guys on tonight. We obviously have some interesting college football to talk about. College Football Playoff Committee released their rankings last night. We'll get into that a little bit. A couple of shockers in there, but a nice head-to-head matchup that will have some significant implications there. Actually, a couple. So typically we don't do a Friday night game, but this one was too difficult to pass up. Coach, Oregon State at Washington Friday night. Both teams come in at 6-2.
Yeah, both these are 6-2 overall, 3-2 in the conference. And, you want to cheer for Oregon State. I mean, who doesn't love a cute beaver? And but Michael Penix, transfer from Indiana, he's leading that Husky offense. And the Husky coach, Kalen DeBoer, he was the offensive coordinator at Indiana back in 2019 when Penix was the quarterback there. Since DeBoer left IU, their offense has been horrible. University of Washington, he got that job after a couple of seasons at Fresno State. He's got 7 wins combined in 2021 for this Washington team. He's already got 6 in his first year, and he'll break that barrier before the year's over. Listen, I think Michael Penix is a smart young man for going to where his coach can get the most out of his talent. And I know DeBoer is a good coach. I'm a dog guy, so I'm going with the Huskies of Washington.
There you go. Steve, who do you like?
Well, both offenses are pretty potent in this one. Oregon State averaging just over 32 points a game. The Huskies averaging 40, with Michael Penix Jr. leading the way. I'll take UW for the dub.
There you go. Hey, I see you're representing this week there, Dave.
Got to. Beat up little brother finally. A little mess at the end of the game, but finally had to get a little Michigan love on the show.
What's the word? I know they suspended the players, and last night Jim Harbaugh was saying not good enough. He'd like to see some type of charges or something a little bit more severe just to curb it from happening in the future. Any more developments on that story today?
Last I heard is there are now 8 players for Michigan State that have been unsuspended they are under investigation. I know Michigan and Michigan State officials at both universities they might be pressing charges on that, but as far as I know, those 8 players are going to be held off the roster for Saturday playing. But I've not heard anything about changes going on at Michigan Stadium. The tunnel there that both teams have gone in and out have been there since the stadium has been built. So I don't know if they have any plans to change it, but they might have to step up security and step up something a little bit different in getting those teams in and out during the breaks.
There you go. Who do you like on Friday?
Gotta love Friday Night Lights at Husky Stadium, and I'm with the guys. I like QB Mike Penix with the Huskies and leading their offense, so I'll take Washington as well.
I'm going to go with Washington as well. I think they surprised everybody with that game against Michigan State, and they've been going pretty strong ever since. So I'm going to go with Washington. The 8-ball knows something that we don't. The 8-ball likes Oregon State. So there you go, Coach, right out of the gate. We're either going to be 1-0 or 0-1 as a group collectively. So, hey, Coach, real quick, it's something like that. When that happens, obviously universities need to kind of discipline themselves. But is that something that should make it up to a league office because it just kind of has implications across the board for so many teams?
Yeah, it's going to have to go up to the league office because there's been a couple of circumstances this year in that tunnel. And to go back and Ohio State and Michigan have really gotten after each other in that tunnel before. And if you've never been there, I mean, it's really not that big. It is tight quarters. the locker rooms are what would you say, Dave? Probably 15 feet across from each other.
They are in a small, narrow hallway. They're right at midfield. They go in back, and it splits off. I've only been on there one time, but yeah, they're literally 15, 20 feet away at the most from each other's locker room.
I mean, you can see guys are having to come out of there, 4 wide, and that's as much as they can get. And but going back to your question, listen, that's never a good situation. A few years ago, Notre Dame's had issues with that one tunnel, and a few years ago, they actually came in and built a visitors tunnel. I don't know if that's even feasible at Michigan Stadium the way that it's built, but they're going to have to do something because that, you want competition, you want spirit, but you don't need it off the field. You need it within the white lines.
I agree. So, Steve, for some reason, you always seem to draw the Texas A&M game. Maybe that's so we can keep you in favor with your son. Jimbo Fisher, I mean, no secret about what's been reported on here as well as other stations, but that has seemed to quiet down a little bit this week, especially with the report that came out Sunday that he's not going anywhere. But changes are coming, whether it be to the staff, systems, overall control of the program. It does look like there could be some potentials for some transfers, and they may have to be, trying to build back up. That said, you got a Florida team coming in 4-4, led by Anthony Richardson, who's seemed to not find any consistency. But you watch him play, and he seems to really be playing hard and fighting for extra yards. So you got to love what he's doing on the field from a heart standpoint, but from a talent standpoint, he's not getting it done. So, but both these teams need a win this week. Who do you like?
This is a matchup between what are probably the two most disappointing teams in the SEC. The Gators at 4-4 have lost 2 straight games where they've given up 40 points. The Aggies at 3-5 have lost 4 in a row, and they haven't scored more than 28 all year. A&M has made the switch to freshman quarterback Connor Wegman, and their offense actually showed signs of life in the home loss to Ole Miss. The Aggies' pass defense is good. Their run defense isn't. I don't trust either team. But might be the last time this year, I'll take the Aggies.
There you go. Dave?
Yeah, definitely both teams have underachieved so far this season. And the Gators, I think they're going to look to get that run game going. That's one of their strengths as well. And the Aggies pretty much are just looking for a W. So I'm going to try and I'm going to join Steve. I'm going to take Texas A&M.
Coach, with the underachieving of Florida, you think that's more that people had higher expectations and felt they were in a better position, or is Billy Napier falling a little short in his first season at Florida?
Well, let's go back to week 2. If this game was being played in week 2, you would have the number 12 team hosting the number 6 team. As it is, you've got the number 38 team hosting the number 60 team. Both teams looked good, though, last week at times against Georgia and Ole Miss, respectively. I mean, Florida had the Georgia game down to 1 score in the second half, albeit from a lot of Georgia mistakes, but they still were competitive. They were fighting. I agree with Steve. I think that A&M needs to ride or die with Connor Wegman. I thought he showed sparks of brilliance, but all that being said, I'm going to go with the Gators on the road. I'm taking Florida.
There you go. I don't think that's a bad pick, and I'm going to go Florida with you too. Connor Wegman looked good last week, but he's not had a week to think about it, and he's still pretty raw as a freshman. So I'm going to go Florida with you too, Coach. So, and the 8-ball likes Florida. The 8-ball likes the Gators. It feels like they get it done down in College Station. So. Dave, this famous scene from a movie in Dead Poets Society where you're all in an assembly and they get a call and kid stands up and says, "Mr. Nolan, it's God. We should have women at Welton Academy." Well, we got a similar call this week from the Pope. He likes what happens when you pick the Notre Dame game. So you get the Notre Dame Clemson game tonight.
All right. Well, it's a big one Saturday night in South Bend, and it looks to be a good test for both teams actually coming in. Both have most recent wins last week with Notre Dame over Syracuse, and the week before that, Clemson beat Syracuse in that exciting game. But a nice victory for the Irish last week, and they're going to continue to look for big games from tight end Michael Mayer and also tailback Audric Estime, like he had a big game running the ball as well. Tigers are going to keep looking for production for QB DJ Uyunglele, an outstanding sophomore running back. Will Shipley, he's been very good out of the backfield in catching and running the ball, and I think we're going to look for Clemson's defensive line. They might be the deciding factor in this one. I think it's going to be a close game, and hopefully the Lord and my wife will forgive me, but I'm going to take Clemson.
There you go. There you go. I'm going to give you a little more time to think about this one, Coach, whether you're going to be a Catholic or a college football. But, Steve, who do you like?
Well, the Irish are just 5-3 and unranked, but they are 2-0 against the top ACC competition with wins over North Carolina and Syracuse. Clemson has been anything but impressive as they constantly seem to be squeaking out one-score wins. I see that trend continuing with a close Tigers victory on the road.
Wow. All right, Coach.
Well, this is always difficult for me, but I'm just going to have to look at the facts. The last ACC win versus Notre Dame by a team that wasn't Clemson was all the way back in 2017, and that was Miami. Now, the last time that the Irish and the Tigers met was in the 2020 ACC championship game, and the Tigers took care of the Irish. But, growing up in Mass, they used to teach us that the faith of a mustard seed can move mountains. Well, I don't think Clemson is a mountain, but they're not Syracuse. So forgive me, Father, but I'm taking Clemson.
I better watch and make sure something doesn't fall here because I'm going to actually go with Notre Dame, which I very rarely do. But take that Stanford loss out of there. They've been on a roll. They beat BYU. They beat North Carolina. They beat Syracuse. They've done it somewhat handily. And I think if this game wasn't at home, I'd go Clemson. But with this game being at Notre Dame, I think they're going to get it done. So, Pine, he's going to manage the game. He ain't going to light it up, but I think they get it done. And the 8-ball, however, the 8-ball likes Clemson. I'm on the outside looking in as usual. So, but, again, if you look, and again, we kind of just touch on the college football playoff committee a little bit here, Coach and Steve. Steve, everybody kind of seemed to freak out a little bit last night with, one loss Alabama over TCU and Michigan falling behind to Clemson. Well, this kind of takes care of itself. Clemson wins this one. They get a little stronger win. They lose. They're definitely out. They're playing a formidable opponent. So, don't you see all the top 7 that should shake out and take care of itself?
Everything will take care of itself. And I think they release things the way that they do to be a little controversial because there's really no need for polls this early other than to get people talking about it. And people aren't going to talk about it if they just go according to form. So they've got a little controversy. They've got people arguing. And that's what they want because everything will settle itself out on the field.
Coach, we got another one. Oklahoma State that really had to put themselves in a good position heading into last week after beating Texas, and then they just flopped against Kansas State. Couldn't even get in the end zone. They're at Kansas. Kansas a little banged up, but should be healthier this week. How do you see this one coming down the wire?
Well, back in the late 50s, early 60s, Paul Anka had a hit song, Put Your Head on My Shoulder. Well, both these starting quarterbacks, have shoulder injuries and have for some time. Spencer Sanders probably shouldn't have been playing last week against Kansas State in that 48-0 loss. You look at Jalen Daniels of the Jayhawks, that Kansas was undefeated going into the TCU game. Since he got hurt in that game, the Jayhawks have lost 3 straight. I think the open date last week after the Baylor loss may help Daniels get back. They're not really announcing anything about either quarterback. They're being very coy. And listen, Eskimo Joe's, they've got a hot dog called the Stillwater Slaw Dog, and that thing is scrumptious. But I'll tell you right now, as much as I hate to say it, I think Kansas is going to get this one. I got to go against my buddies at Eskimo Joe. I'm picking the Jayhawks.
Tell you what, you can get Oklahoma State a large to-go order for the ride up there to Kansas because if they pull it out, you can pay them back that way. Dave, what you think?
Yeah, Coach had it right. Both teams coming into this one after bad losses last week. Kansas on that 3-game skid. Oklahoma State got whacked by K-State last week. So I think the Cowboys are going to circle the wagon in this one. I got Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State. Okay, Steve?
Cowboys are hoping their second straight visit to the state of Kansas goes better this week. That was a 48-0 shellacking in Manhattan. Kansas has lost 3 in a row. TCU, Baylor, and Oklahoma following their 5-0 start. I'll take Mike Gundy's squad to bounce back.
Wow. I'm going Kansas. Last week was more than just talent and injury, not even getting in the end zone. To me, that was a little bit more desire and heart. And sometimes it feels like Mike Gundy, feels like, a big game like against Texas, he's coached him, and that's the finish line. And I think sometimes it's hard to get him back up. So I go Kansas. But 8-Ball likes Oklahoma State. So there we go. 8-Ball likes the Cowboys. Dave, you got Baylor Bears, who rallied last week, who been on a little bit of a lull, but really kind of found some firepower. They're going in against Oklahoma, who again got above the 500 mark at Oklahoma. And again, this one I think puts the winner of this game finds themselves, top of the middle in the Big 12 and feeling good about heading into recruiting in next year. So Baylor or Oklahoma?
Well, I'm hoping the Big 12 is nice to me because last week I think all the Big 12 games I probably got wrong. Like that was a tough week last week in the Big 12, lots of upsets, but big victories for both teams on the road last week. Baylor quarterback Blake Shapen, he's continued to have a nice sophomore season for the Bears, and Sooners quarterback Dylan Gabriel, he's starting to come into his own a little bit and starting to make it his team under the new coaching staff there. And being in Norman, I think I'm going to take Oklahoma this week.
Coach?
This game kind of reminds me of a prom date that your cousin set up for you. You don't know what you're getting till the door opens. I mean, that's all I can say.
Now, you're not taking your cousin to the game, are you, Coach?
No. Not taking the cousin to the game, although I do have some very nice-looking cousins, by the way. But since my favorite coach of all time is Barry, let's hang half 100 on them, Switzer, I'm going to go with the Sooners. And, half 100 doesn't sound like a whole lot of points right now, but back in the 70s and 80s when Switzer coached, that's like scored 80 and 90 today. So
that's true. It's true. You don't think about that, but that's true. Steve, you going to be able to pick this one up? Because I'm afraid the words Boomer Sooner might have to come out of your mouth. And as a Longhorn and an Aggie fan, that's also tell you. I'm not sure they can make it past those lips.
Yeah, this pick may be tough. Oklahoma's won 24 of their past 26 in the month of November, and they lead the all-time series against Baylor 28-4. But the Bears won last year in Waco 27-14. I look for receiver Marvin Mims to have a big game, and that Sooner Schooner to be rolling all over the field in a high-scoring affair. I'll take OU.
Yeah, I think the Sooner Schooner stays on all four wheels this week, so I'm going to go with Oklahoma as well. 8-Ball likes Baylor. So 8-Ball likes Baylor. So, all right, Coach. Second week of the season, Steve Sarkisian was walking on water at Texas when he barely lost to Alabama. Obviously no moral victories, but they felt pretty good coming out of that game. Well, I think this is premature. You did start to hear and see some articles about, him being on the hot seat after losing the lead at Oklahoma State, and that's kind of become I wouldn't say a staple, but a problem. He's lost some big leads over the last 2 years and not been able to hold on. And, now they go up to Kansas State, who looked very good last week against Oklahoma State. Can the Longhorns get it done on the road?
I think they can. They come in at 5-3. Wildcats ranked number 12 at 6-2. The Horns are open, had a chance to get healthy. Kansas State, of course, as we talked about, 48-0 over Oklahoma State. Quinn Ewers got hurt in that Alabama game. He's come back and he's played well at times, played poorly at times. And this game really comes down to that. If number 3 has a big day, I think Sark and Texas wins. But I'm a defensive guy, and I think Kansas State's going to carry the day. I go with the Wildcats here.
Dave?
Yeah, another Big 12 matchup for me, but a huge victory last week for K-State, and they're at home again this week. But Coach nailed that. I'm going to look for Texas quarterback freshman Quinn Ewers to have a big game, so I'm going to hook 'em horns. I got Texas.
Dave.
Kansas State's coming into this one off their most impressive performance of the season, that big win over Oklahoma State. It was the biggest shutout win over a top 10 team since 1966. Texas coming into this one off a bye. I think their defense can control the Wildcats' running game. Maybe I'm a bit biased, but I'll say hook 'em for the victory.
It doesn't matter which quarterback you put in for Kansas State; they both seem to be playing with a lot of confidence. And as much as a matchup as that was, you don't have to really keep your intensity level up much when you're up 48-0. So I think Kansas State's got a lot left in the tank and a lot more confidence at quarterback right now. So I'm going to go Kansas State. And the 8-ball likes Kansas State as well. So there we go. All right, Steve, I think this one is the one everybody's been talking about, looking forward to. A little bit more intensity and controversy and conversation added to it after last night when the College Football Playoff Committee put Tennessee at 1 and dropped Georgia to number 3. But again, winner of this one most likely ends up in the SEC championship and a clear path to the title game. What do you think?
Well, such a big-time battle between the Hedges and Athens this week. The winner of this one, like you say, takes the inside track in winning the SEC East and a berth in the conference championship game. You talk about balance. The Volunteers offense has scored 52 touchdowns this year, 26 passing, 26 running. They average just a tick under 50 points a game, that half 100. Georgia's offense is no slouch, averaging 530 yards per contest, which is second in the nation. I've seen a lot of experts picking the underdog Vols here, but I'll stick with the defending national champions until someone knocks them off. Give me the Bulldogs.
There you go. Dave?
Yeah, here's definitely your game of the weekend. And Tennessee continues to impress, especially behind quarterback Heisman hopeful Hendon Hooker. But I see the Dogs' defense coming to play and getting them after him this weekend. So I'm going to take Georgia.
Hey, Coach, this morning broke down the first 4 on Game Day Sports Radio. And Las Vegas insider Mike Bernard had this to say about the way the committee viewed the win over Kentucky, over the win versus Alabama. Let's listen to what he had to say real quick.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, it's the first time we have a number 1 AP team play the number 1 college football team in the 9-year history, which is kind of trivial. But to your point about Tennessee and Georgia being 1 and 3, first of all, Georgia's an 8 or 8.5 point favorite. Of course, they have the home field advantage, and that gives them 3 or 4 points. But before Tennessee just annihilated Kentucky, that line was going to be 11.5 to 13. So the odds makers pretty much were more impressed with how they dismantled Kentucky than the win over Alabama. And, again, it's going to play out on Saturday with the Tennessee-Georgia game. Georgia's going to have a huge home field advantage. I was going to take Tennessee when they were getting double digits. Now I haven't really decided.
All right, Coach, any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I totally agree with Mike. As a matter of fact, it's again, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama, they're in positions where they're going to eliminate each other, because it doesn't matter if Tennessee or Georgia wins on Saturday. Whoever gets the SEC championship game, if Alabama wins out, it's going to play Alabama. So they will kind of eliminate each other per se. And again, that's saying that Ole Miss doesn't jump in the mix and run the table by beating Alabama. But no, I think Mike is spot on. Ohio State, Michigan, they're both there. One of those two, they're going to eliminate the other. I mean, the committee knows what they're doing. They're trying to pick the 4 best teams, but they know early on they've got some flexibility to throw some curveballs at the general fan to get everybody riled up. Because now tell me something. How many Alabama fans have you talked to today that are saying, "No, there's no way we're not one of the best 4 teams. There's no way we're not one of the best 4 teams." That's what the committee wants.
Right. So who do you like, Georgia or Tennessee this week?
Well, I don't know if there's any possibility of this game living up to the hype. If it does, it's going to be an unbelievable game. The Vols looked very sharp against Kentucky last week. The only true drive that the Kentucky Wildcats had was that first one where they scored. After that, that Vol defense just shut them down. Georgia, though, they got sloppy at times against Florida, allowed Florida to crawl back in the game. They can't get away with that on Saturday with Tennessee. Now, Nolan Smith, the leading rusher or leading sack rush in for the Bulldogs, he was their leading sacker, had 3 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, 16 quarterback hurries. He was listed as doubtful as he had to leave the Florida game. However, they've announced that he has a torn pec muscle and will miss the rest of the season. Listen, I'm a dog guy. I've said it all along. So I'm going to go with the Dogs. But I'm going with Smokey, that blue tick hound. I'm taking Tennessee.
There you go. There you go. Well, I'm going to join you. I think they've looked sharp. I like what Josh Heupel's done up there. And I agree. I think at times, and this is not the only time last week that you saw Georgia get a little sloppy. Felt a lot more confident picking Tennessee until the committee put Tennessee at number 1. I think they gave Georgia a little bit of motivation, not only putting Tennessee at 1, but dropping them to 3. So I think they might be a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and stick with Tennessee because they've looked sharp all year long. But 8-Ball likes Georgia. 8-Ball thinks Georgia can continue their streak of wins and get to another SEC championship game. All right, Coach, you might want to leave the room on this next one just for a minute as I kind of mentioned both teams that are playing. Gave it to Dave, Midwest, because this one probably had to dig deep for some research on this one because there isn't a lot of positive to say about either one of them right now. But I think this one's going to tell the tale of who's going up and who's going down. You got Kirk Ferentz in Iowa, who's been under a lot of fire this year, not only for the way the team's played, but is he prepared to potentially make a tough decision at the end of the year and release his son as the offensive coordinator because the offensive performance has gone down the last couple of years. And they're at Coach Purdue, your favorite team.
Yes.
Dave, who do you like?
This is definitely a Big Ten middle of the pack game, and Iowa's offense has just been brutal so far this year, but they finally got their offense going against a bad Northwestern team last week, and they put up 33 points, and that's the most points that they've had so far this season. Purdue, they've not really had too many issues this year. They've been averaging 33 points a game so far every game, and I think Boilermaker quarterback Aiden O'Connell, he's going to have a big day on Saturday, so I'll take Purdue to win this one big.
Steve?
Iowa's 4-4, and they threw 3 touchdowns this season. Not last week. 3 passing touchdowns all year. But their defense is stout, only allowing a shade under 16 points a game. I think Purdue has too much offense. Give me Boilermaker.
Coach, can you get the words out of your mouth?
Oh, yeah. Listen, the Hawkeyes, after scoring 30 points all of October last week, blew it up for 33, as Dave said. Scoreboard operator had hand cramps after that one with the Hawkeyes. As Steve said, Iowa's defense, they're very stout. They'll play well as usual, but they'll get worn down. And the Purdue offense will take the day. I'm going Boilermakers, so it's probably the best thing to go and bet all your money on Iowa, because they'll probably score 80 on Saturday. So
that's the way it's been, and I'm going to go ahead and go Purdue myself. But shockingly, Coach, Purdue could still find themselves in the Big Ten title game because they have a matchup coming up with Illinois and next week or the week after, and the winner of that will more than likely be in the game. So, it's just that's just been a tough one all year. But we'll go with Purdue, and we'll see if we can't make some people some money. And Coach, 8-Ball must know your trend because the 8-Ball went with Iowa. So the 8-Ball just put all its money on Iowa. So he must have known which way you were going to go right out of the gate.
Must have.
Because, you've got there you go. So, this one, again, with all the big matchups this weekend, you got it's interesting. You got a number 22 versus a number 21 Number 21 Wake Forest against number 22 NC State. Both 6-2 in overall, 2-2 in the conference, but they find themselves in bottom of the pack in the ACC Atlantic, which has been pretty stout this year. But again, I think neither one of them have any type of playoff implications as far as the ACC championship, but still looking for a New Year's Day bowl game. The victor here probably finds themselves in a position for that. So, Coach, who do you like?
Wake Forest last week against Louisville in that loss had 8 turnovers. It was just a weird game. It was the Demon Deacons. That was just one of those Murphy's Law things where if it could go bad, it did go bad. The Wolfpack, they're 6-2, but not overly impressed with the Wolfpack. I like Dave Dorn, but it's just not overly impressed with those guys. I'm going to take the Demon Deacons on the road. I'll pick Wake Forest.
Dave?
I think this could be actually a pretty good game on Saturday, and I like that Wake Forest quarterback Sam Hartman. He continues to put up big numbers this year. He did have a rough week last week, and NC State, they're still looking to improve at home. They've not been that impressive so far this year, but I'm going to take the Demon Deacons as well to get the win on the road.
Steve?
Yeah, Coach mentioned the 8 turnovers. I just can't see that happening 2 weeks in a row. It's probably scary for the Demon Deacon fans, but here's another man on the bus. I'll take Wake.
Yeah, I'm going to take Wake too. And I watched that game last Thursday against NC State versus Virginia Tech. NC State had to work a little too hard for me to get points. And, last week was one of those things. Once it starts, sometimes you can't stop the fall. And it just seemed like that's what happened. And I don't think it replicates itself. So I'm going Wake. We're across the board with Wake. But the 8 ball likes NC State. So I think this is going to be we all go 8-2, and the 8 ball goes 2-8 weekend, or vice versa. So the 8 ball's getting on the train going the other direction. All right, last one of the night, Steve. Go back to the 90s and the early 2000s. I think the only 2 words you had to say was wide right. To tell everybody what game was coming up. Bobby Bowden, who left us a couple of years ago. I mean, I think people still have visions of him running out to the middle of the field, taking that hat off and kind of putting his hands on his hips. Couldn't believe it went wide right, but. We've got Florida State at Miami, always a classic, always one that they're going to fight till the end for. Who do you like?
Well, Florida State's 5-3, coming off that 41-16 win over Georgia Tech. Miami's 4-4 after that, shall we say, interesting 14-12 victory over Virginia in 4 overtimes, a game which featured no touchdowns. The Seminoles offense is ranked 5th nationally, while the Canes defense is rated 9th. Miami's struggling to find consistency in Mario Cristobal's first year, losing home games to Duke and Middle Tennessee State. And also they failed to score a touchdown in a road loss to Texas A&M. While this one's in Miami at night, I'll go with Mike Norvell's squad to score enough for a Seminoles victory.
Coach?
As Steve said, you look at the losses of this game. Miami has had some tough losses. I mean, they got blown out by Tennessee, but I mean, who hasn't? I mean, everybody. I mean, Kentucky got blown out by Tennessee last week. Oh, wait a second, that was a Middle Tennessee, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, they got blew out by Middle Tennessee, and everybody does that. I mean, come on, Seminoles, they've lost to 3 ranked teams. And I just can't see how the Seminoles are not going to go and get bowl eligible. Jackie Gleason on his show from Miami Beach used to say how sweet it is. And it's going to be sweet for Mike Norvell and the Seminoles. I'm taking Florida State.
Dave?
Well, this definitely isn't the game that it used to be 20, 25 years ago. I remember those battles back in the late 90s, and the Hurricanes continue to be inconsistent. They're not up to the U standards under Mario Cristobal. And the Seminoles, like Coach said, haven't really played bad this year. They got 3 tough ACC losses, and they've all been to ranked teams. So I'm going to take Florida State on the road in this one.
Yeah, I personally think Miami and Virginia should pay all the fans that were there last week, give them a refund on their ticket for having to sit and endure that game because, that just looked like it was excruciating. But obviously that doesn't happen. Huh?
The good news about that game is the Virginia grounds crew does not have to paint either end zone this week. They're fresh.
There you go. Yeah, you're right about that. So, and I'm sure they were happy about that. But I'm going to go Florida State as well. And like I say, it's not the matchup it used to be. And we got a clean sweep there. The 8-ball likes Florida State. So, all right, boys. Well, anything you guys want to add? It's going to be, you got Clemson, Notre Dame, obviously Texas, or not Texas, Tennessee, Georgia, which, I don't think there won't be anybody watching college football will probably have their TV tuned to that one. So, a lot of games, a lot of matchups, or a lot of implications this weekend, and obviously we get a lot of answers next Tuesday on based on the shakeout, the fallout from. And the other one we didn't even really talk about is you got Alabama, traveling down to Death Valley, Baton Rouge, at the double-digit line. I think 13.5 right now, but Brian Kelly seems to have them pointed in the right direction. And Alabama, some questions, but Alabama gets a win there. They control their own destiny. They don't, but I think this is the first time in a couple of years the LSU team feels like they might have a chance. Coach?
Well, think about it. The last 10 plus years, this Alabama LSU game was the marquee game across the nation, not just in the Southeastern Conference. I think it's something when you've got a game like Florida and Georgia, Tennessee and Georgia in the mix. And Alabama and LSU really is kind of an afterthought this week.
It is, and it hasn't been in a long time. But it should be a good game nonetheless.
I want to see if LSU pulls off the victory. If Coach Kelly brings out that fake Southern drawl again.
You saw last 2 weeks.
Steve, if LSU wins, those Cajuns won't matter what kind of draw he has. I can tell you that much right now.
Well, Coach, you would be having, I don't know if you saw the interview, but he was, they were talking about him. I know this is something that you've been on, is the fans storming the field. So he's giving his post-game interview, and the state troopers came over to get him, and they said, hey, we got to go. And he said, what, is my interview that bad? He said he never dreamed that the fans would storm the field after beating Ole Miss. And he said, I couldn't figure out why they were getting me out of there. I figured maybe I was really doing bad on my interview. So there you go. He wasn't expecting that, but it's nice to see LSU getting back. Even though if you're an Alabama fan, you always want to win that one, but it's always fun to have it a tough matchup. Steve, you got both you guys, Texas and Texas A&M. Your son down there. Hopefully, he'll get to go to the game and cheer him on to a victory. But
yeah, he'll be
if
there.
Not, he might want to provide
victory part.
If not, he might want to help get Jimbo into the witness protection program down there. So, all right, guys, always a pleasure. You guys have a good evening. Let's enjoy some college football this week, and I'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds good.
Have a good one.